When you were listening to Steve's bio, you heard about some of the buildings, those with a past history, because Steve today is really involved in a lot of major projects and developments. He bought a small hotel last week, a baby hotel, for a very modest price called the Park Lane Hotel. Where he's planning different ideas, and then he decided that years ago he went down to Lower Manhattan when nobody wanted to be there, and he converted 10 Hanover Square, and he took that and made it a great residential. Then he did a little uptick over there and sold it to a REIT, one of their first purchases coming in from Denver. But Steve, so how do you look at the market? You've been such a voracious purchaser this past year. You become bullish, and you're sitting next to your friend the pessimist.
Well, you're not. I don't think, Michael, you're a pessimist. But we have been recently active, and I wish, candidly, we had been more active. The market is strong in New York City, and I think we've talked about it for all the right reasons. It's a safe haven for a lot of foreign capital, and now you're beginning to see the torrent of Chinese capital coming into this town. And why? We were speaking on your show, and Marty Edelman mentioned that Fosun had bought Chase Manhattan Plaza downtown, and they paid a big number, $700 million. But that big number is $350 a square foot. And we're selling a building in London at $3,000 a square foot, and I don't think that London has the metrics that New York City has. So, for all the right reasons, New York City is a very strong marketplace.
Let's talk about downtown, because there's so much that's happening downtown, and many people would be worried about the Trade Center. Not all the buildings are leased, and there's going to be retail from Westfield, there's going to be retail from Brookfield, and in the middle of that, you and your partners decide to buy a couple of sites downtown. Tell us about the sites that you bought downtown, what you're planning to do with it, and your thoughts over there in general.
So, excuse me, we bought 22 Thames, which is going to be an 80-20 rental. It's very rare in this day and age that you can buy land cheap enough to do a rental. And we're going to do that's with the Fisher Brothers, and we're going to do that. And then again with the Fisher Brothers, we bought 101 Murray, and both of those sites are rim where Westfield is doing their retail. And it's interesting because I've been telling Michael I've seen that retail where the Oculus is, and it's going to be the best retail in New York City, if not the best in the world. And the Wall Street Journal have actually walked it. It's nothing short of incredible. The Wall Street Journal announced today that Westfield had just bought out the other 50% from the Port Authority on that. They paid $600 million for the first 50%, just paid $800 million and change for the next 50 with an equity kicker to the Port Authority. So it just sort of tells you what smart guys feel the value of that is. That downtown area is going to be nothing short of incredible.
Let's talk about Murray Street. What are you planning to do on Murray Street? I mean, this is the former St. John's University campus.
101 Murray, we're doing condos. I mean, we paid a number for that site such that it was always intended as a condo, but interestingly, we paid that number and we stressed over that number, and the fact is that it looks like a cheap number today, and because that's just the nature of New York. That's just the nature of what's happening in New York City. I walk everywhere. I don't generally travel by car. I walk everywhere. And I was walking just the other day to the topping off at 150 Charles. So 150 Charles is a condominium down in the West Village where which Peter financed, by the way, not at 150 over. He did do the financing there, and we're extremely grateful to him for it. But it's a condominium in the West Village on the water. And we sold that condominium out in 12 weeks, literally 12 weeks, 300,000 square feet of space.
And how inexpensive were those units?
We sold at average prices of around $3,300 a foot, which was probably $1,000 north of pro forma. And it begs the question, did we leave money on the table? We probably did, but that's okay. We're not last dollar oriented. You can't sell something in 12 weeks, 96 residences, and not have left money on the table. So it just tells you that there's even more velocity in this marketplace.
So you're walking towards 150 Charles?
And so I'm walking downtown, and I'm thinking to myself that every neighborhood I'm passing is a nice neighborhood with, a really nice place to live. New York City is really, it's a dynamic town. And this came up on your show the other day, and we were asked about the new mayor and what's going to happen. I tell you, I think he's going to really surprise on the upside. I really believe that. And I think there are just certain changes that have been institutionalized in New York City, and we're never going back to the days of high crime.
The man?
Right, it's just not going to happen out there. So
let's talk. When we were talking the other day on the show on 150 Charles, the interesting situation was that you brought up the fact that, as opposed to out-of-towners, most of the buyers are locals, right? People relocating within New York City.
Yeah, 150 Charles got, I want to say, 3 foreign buyers. And those foreign buyers, I'm not even sure I would classify as real foreign buyers. They were foreigners who had relocated overseas in connection with their jobs and were coming back to now work in the United States. And so that's not a real foreigner. In my view, I define foreign buyers as people who are for the first time coming to New York. Their capital might be flight capital because of confiscatory tax policies in Europe, or because of devaluations in Latin America, and they want to get their money out of those sorts of places. That's not the foreign buyer we saw at 150 Charles. At 10 Madison Square Park West, where we've probably sold 92% of that building in maybe 4 months. So, again, these are unheard of velocity out there. But we have some more foreign buyers.
Let's talk about 10 Madison Square West, because it's an interesting situation. You had the 2 toy buildings over there, and you took some very interesting perspective because the back units didn't have any really light or air. So what did you do over there to expand and to build a core and shell out of that?
It's a large, deep building, and so we cored out the middle of the property, because you would have had these apartments in the back that would have been dark and long, and that really doesn't work for residential. We cored that out, and then we just took that FAR, that space, and put it on top of the building. And so we created better apartments downstairs with great light and air, and we, in fact, made a garden in the center, and then created more height up top and great views of Madison Square Park. And Madison Square Park is nothing short of incredible. The Edition Hotel is going up there, and it's just it's a really fabulous, dynamic area and centrally located.
What about talking about hotels? That small little property on Central Park. Let's talk about the Park Lane Hotel. It's been around for a number of years. People, the Hemsley estate was going on again, off again, selling it, different approaches. What are you and your partners going to be doing with that property?
So, every time you buy a building in this town, you're accused of overpaying, and clearly we overpaid as compared to whoever was second or third. But candidly, I didn't understand how more people didn't chase the price. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not often that I talk about a deal in this way, but this Park Lane is a much different deal. First of all, in our view, as a condo site, it's the best site on Central Park. It's next to Fifth Avenue, incredible frontage, great frontage in the back. If you wanted to create a porte cochere, the zoning is nothing short of incredible. But most importantly, and this has been our philosophy in buying from the beginning out there, we're always buying optionality. So if you look at the 10 Hanover buy, 10 Hanover could have been a hotel, could have been a residential property, could have been a rental, could have been a condominium. It was the same thing with 10 Madison Square Park West, which when we bought it was known as 1107 Broadway. We had an office game plan there, and we also had either a condo or a hotel game plan. Well, it's the same thing at the Park Lane. So the Park Lane, we took it over. Highgate is managing it for us. They are, in our opinion, the best hotel manager in the city of New York. And we are operating that as a hotel, and we are probably going to generate this year a 4% unlevered return on our investment. So we have an unencumbered, we don't have a flag on there, so we can shut that cash flow off on 24 hours notice. So we basically land banked what might be a site. Alternatively, it may remain as a hotel. We haven't quite figured that out yet. But we basically land banked in a world where the 10-year T-bill is 270. We land banked the site at a 400 basis point unlevered return with optionality to plan a condominium if we like, or maintain it as part hotel, and decide what we're going to do based on market conditions. To me, that's you don't see real estate deals like that.
You bring up an interesting thing that you said you land-based it and then you were able to take pricing. Besides my friend, we have two lenders here today. We have Melissa from the small little insurance company called Prudential, and then we have Peter Darcy. How easy is it in financing? I know that you're not a major leverer. You don't have the leverage to the last dollar. Where do you see the financing? Because the market has become rather opulent. A lot of people out there in the market, and you've utilized Starwood, you've used other people. How are you financing these transactions today, and how do you see pricing, and how do you see the lenders looking at deals?
Well, I think if you're fortunate enough, as we are today, to have a relationship with Peter and Gino over at M&T or at Wells Fargo, and M&T invariably teams up with Wells Fargo and a lot of these things together. So if you're fortunate enough, and believe me when I tell you, and this is not, I'm not pandering to them, I mean, it's a blessing in our economic life that we have a relationship with M&T and with Wells. So if you're lucky enough to have relationships with banks like that, then you can get financed. But other than that, I think it's difficult out there. And this gets to my favorite topic, which is Dodd-Frank. So I think it's anti-New York legislation. I was a legislative aide for Senator Javits. I say it all the time, Michael. I've said it on your show, that Javits and Moynihan would have never countenanced Dodd-Frank. There hasn't been a major space take in New York City from the big financial firms, and I don't know, it has to be at least 5 years, and I think that's an abomination. And the fact of the matter is, and I believe this, that I couldn't start my business today as I did in 1986. I think the transmission lines for debt are clogged, and in New York City, it's more efficient than anywhere in the country. That's a fact. There are no real conventional lenders, for instance, in a hot market like Miami.
What are you doing in Times Square? I was there last week, and I noticed this building coming down. It looked like it had a nice movie theater at one time. What are you doing over there?
So we are building at 701 7th Avenue with partners the first new build retail in Times Square. Roughly 80,000 square feet, basically column free. So it's really going to be right on Duffy Square. And that market is just unbelievable. 500,000 visitors every single day, and they're selling in Times Square 24 hours a day. On top of that, we're putting a Marriott Edition hotel. They're just opening up their first one in London. It's a terrific success. But that Edition brand, which is concepted by Ian Schrager, is really an amazing brand. It's very similar to the sort of demographic that the W is looking for. And so I think it's going to do very, very well there. And if you look at hotel occupancy rates in Times Square today, they're probably north of 97%, and there's not a lot of new product there. And you know why? Because that's the #1 destination for visitors when they come to New York. They just want to be there. So the retail has infilled in an amazing way. The food is incredible, and this is sort of what happens in this town. Like, we've had such good political leadership, but in the last 16 years, Giuliani, Bloomberg, creating these sort of districts, and Times Square. I say it all the time. I was speaking at a conference once recently, and I said that everybody in the real estate business ought to pay a promote or a profit participation to Mayor Bloomberg, because he created this infrastructure in this landscape that almost makes it easy, if you do your job correctly as a real estate developer, to make money in this town.
Let's talk about your thoughts about the Hudson Square and let's leave the borough of Manhattan to talk about the other boroughs.
I think Hudson Square is going to be...
Hudson Square and Hudson Yard. I apologize, both
Right.
places.
So I think Hudson Yards is going to be incredible. You couldn't ask for a better developer than Related to lead the charge there, and I think they're the right team for the right job. But again, and I think New York City needs new office space. That's clear. We need efficient office space, and there's a lot of talk out there about the tech companies wanting to go into that Midtown South market because they like the smaller type of charming space. But the fact is that large space users need efficient space, and Hudson is designed to address that need. But my opinion, and again, I think it gets right back to Dodd-Frank, is that New York needs the financial, the engine in this town has traditionally been the financial companies. Mayor Bloomberg did an amazing job of getting Technion here. We're the #2 city in the United States for generating tech jobs, and I think that's been incredible for New York City. But I believe we gotta peel back some of those incredibly onerous regulations in Dodd-Frank, Michael, and I say it all the time. And it's not because I'm a banker. It's not because that I would do any better. On some level, Dodd-Frank benefits me. Why? Because there's plenty of people who can't get debt that I can get. But the transmission devices for debt in this country are clogged, and I believe they're clogged unfairly. So.
Okay, let's, one time you even knew how the state of New Jersey was. You had property in Newark and other places. How do you see, a lot of companies relocated to Newark, but the real reason that they relocated was the urban tax credits and the grow bonds. What's your thought about Newark and other things? Because Fort Lee today, you have two major developments. You have the Kushner development and the SJP development. Do you think the Garden State is have opportunities, or it's still not something that you're going to run back to?
No, I think that they have good political leadership. They're Governor Christie is saying all the right things, and I think if we had more time, and we don't. I mean, we just there's only so much you can do. But I think if we had more time, we probably would be trying to build across the river. And why? Because the land is cheaper, and people want to live there. And for me, it feels a little bit like Queens West when you go over to Jersey City and Hoboken and so forth. It feels to me a little bit like how Queens West operates with Manhattan. Same thing in Jersey. Path train right in, very, very efficient to get to. It almost feels like a much more affordable option to some of the rental options in New York City. So I think there's plenty of opportunity. There's some opportunity there. It's just that we're a small boutique shop, and there's only so much that we can do.
About a year ago, I think, or maybe a year and a half ago, you and I were on our circuit again, and we were out in Long Island speaking, and at that time you were thinking of doing something in Nassau County, but one of the big negatives of Nassau County was the real estate taxes. Anything ever happened over there? And since you even grew up in Baldwin Harbor, after you were born, what's your thoughts about Long Island?
Well, I mean, the taxes are onerous. I've actually met with the Nassau County executive. I'm having, Mangano, and I think I think he's doing a pretty good job out there. But I don't know. Long Island feels a little bit listless to me. I think they're trying to get it going out there, but there's not a lot of things that we can do out in Long Island.